Hello there, this is Meow, then a love interest. And today we're talking about the Cat of Nine Tails, Catwoman herself, as she's been represented over the years. In this episode, let's unsheath our claws with the Countess of Criminality and chat about the plot to ransom the United World Security Council. We'll get into her schemes, her relationship with one Mr. Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, and what all this means for the hip cats in the audience. Let's get started.
But I say let's try it. We have to do something to get Batman out of the way.
The Princess of Plunder is always defined by her fur-raising felonies, so let's start with the nefarious crimes our Marchioness of Misdemeanors is up to in Batman 1966.
Perfect, Riddler. Perfect.
This feature-length adventure premiered 2 months after the television show's first season ended, and appropriately raised the stakes by recruiting 4 arch-villains to attempt to defeat the dynamic duo.
What for? Their minimum objective must be the entire world.
The United Underworld may be a fractious organization, but they have a convoluted plan that plays to each member's strengths.
The trigger? One of my riddles, of course. And as Kitka, she shall lure some millionaire from the Joker's Jack in the Box through that window, the arms of the Penguin's exploding octopus.
It's all based on this guy, Commodore Schmidlap. He invented this total dehydrator. The United Underworld is going to dehydrate the United World members and then hold them hostage until paid quite the ransom.
$1 billion cash from each country.
But there is an ever-present undercurrent to this plan. Try to kill the Batman.
We've got to get Batman before he gets us.
The first attempt on Batman's life involves a holographic version of the yacht at the opening of the film. This fails, of course, something Catwoman upbraids Penguin for.
Batman's boots didn't even look damp.
The second attempt is when Batman and Robin figure out the holographic nature of the yacht, which must have been projected in some way. They find the source, and the villains use Penguin's submarine to attack. In a bit of luck, a heroic porpoise sacrifices itself for the Caped Crusaders.
Gosh, Batman. Nobility of the almost human porpoise.
The third attempt comes from having Miss Kitka,
Comrade Katania Irenia Tatania Karenska Alisov,
Catwoman in disguise, lure Bruce Wayne into a kidnapping, so that obviously Batman will rush in immediately to the rescue, and then fall into Joker's trap and be catapulted into Penguin's clutches.
Exploding octopus?
For some mysterious reason, this does not work. Bruce Wayne fights the villains and manages to escape, attempting to rescue Miss Kitka in the process, but is not able to find her.
Miss Kitka! Where are you?
The next attempt is Penguin's plan, disguising himself as Schmidlap to get to the Batcave with some dehydrated goons to even the odds. This doesn't work,
Holy costume party, that's the Penguin.
Obviously.
because they see through his disguise, and then he uses heavy water to rehydrate them. Obviously, that's unstable. So the fifth attempt involves Riddler's rockets and the Batcopter, fortunately foiled by a foam rubber convention, in another fantastic stroke of luck.
Some luck. Landing right on top of a bed of foam rubber.
The last attempt is when the villains are making their getaway with the United World members in these vials. They send torpedoes after Batman, but he is always prepared, resulting in the submarine being incapacitated and a final fight to ensue. Now you may be wondering, how much of this story is actually about Catwoman. Though we meet her early on as Miss Kitka, it is unclear if this initial introduction to Batman is meant to do much.
I penetrated their press conference. The fools are completely baffled.
Miss Kitka only appears to Bruce Wayne for the rest of the movie, and Catwoman never uses the disguise again after it's served its purpose of luring Bruce Wayne into their trap. I'll get more into this in the next section.
It approaches a climax.
Yet, not so fast.
Most of the nefarious schemes rely heavily on Penguin's nautical accoutrement, a little on Riddler's cleverness, and honestly, Joker and Catwoman do not make a significant contribution to the group project.
I hope Penguin made it. Who needs him?
What's the matter with you all?
She's right.
But this does leave us with an interesting impression, especially given that Miss Kitka is the only successful part of the plan the rogues enact in the whole film. That means Catwoman is the only one whose part of the scheme actually works, and you know what? Good for her.
She's quite well, Mr. Wayne.
Until the end, when the same luck Batman always seems to have applies to a more personal situation. She falls, and he figures out that he and Miss Kitka aren't going to be bringing down the Iron Curtain after all.
This curtain which separates our countries is so foolish.
Throughout the film, Catwoman's evil tools may be less flashy than the others, but hers always work. And her disguise may be revealed eventually, but it did fool Batman and Robin. It may not be her ideas or her hardware, but she keeps the villains together and focused on their goal, with the clearest reason for why she's here.
$1 billion cash.
So the short-lived United Underworld was foiled by the Caped Crusader, as one would expect, but let us not forget how instrumental the Viscountess of Venality really was, and how she came the closest to successfully sabotaging both the United World Security Council and Bruce Wayne himself.
Miss Kitka dies if you take one more step.
For our second section, let's talk about Catwoman's relationship with Batman. And with Bruce Wayne. Now, the theme of my channel is to discuss female characters outside of their role in male-centric stories, but Catwoman and Batman have always been interlinked. Bob Kane and Bill Finger created Catwoman to be, according to Kane, a somewhat friendly foe, also a romantic interest in Batman's rather sterile life. He specifies that she commits crimes, but is not a murderer like the other villains. She was a kind of female Batman, except she was a villainess, and he was a hero.
But I am about to be utterly and madly carried away.
So, in the Jungian sense, she is his anima, the shadow self, brought to life. How Bruce interacts with his shadow self tells us a great deal about his character as well as about hers. This is something explored more intentionally in later iterations of the characters, but it is not absent here in their first feature-length outing.
Comrade Wayne? My name is Kitanya Irenia Tatanya Karenska Alesov.
I realize that, especially with this version of Batman, things aren't that serious.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
But fortunately, this was written by men, and how they wrote the evil and female shadow version of Batman still tells us a lot, psychologically speaking, with how Bruce may view his shadow self and how he has come to terms with himself and his alter ego. So let's dive in.
We haven't one moment to lose.
Their first interaction is here, where she meets him in disguise and tries to get him to reveal himself.
To take off the mask to give the better picture.
Excellent shadow self behavior. Obviously, this does not work because he really is his true self right now, isn't he? The next time is here, when she is again Miss Kitka, and now attempting to seduce Bruce Wayne. It's super effective.
It approaches a climax.
He may be resistant to his anima when she is revealed, but he is drawn to her when she's in disguise. Followed by a rare Bruce Wayne and Catwoman interaction.
You abominable outlaws. Where is she, Catwoman? Show me Miss Kitka.
Yes, he is quite distressed to see his anima in all her glory, while he is not being his true self. This scene in particular makes me think he really isn't making any effort to disguise the fact that he's Batman. Good thing no one picks up on it.
I can't understand why Batman hasn't dashed into our track.
In their only Batman and Catwoman interaction, something rather interesting happens. They fight, just a bit. Catwoman does not get into any fistfights in this series, and then she rejects him thoroughly before tripping and causing her own mask to fall off.
Holy heartbreak. Miss Kitka.
I again realize this is mostly for laughs, especially how this scene plays for Bruce. But these psychological implications are staggering for such a short interaction. If she is his anima, then he is her animus, whom she could be if she gave up her life of crime. And she thoroughly rejects that idea because she likes being the Countess of Criminality. She likes this version of herself.
Catwoman, stop, I said.
I don't think you mean that, Batman.
Except immediately afterward, she is unmasked. And while Bruce is realizing that Miss Kitka is not real, this is a rare moment where he sees Catwoman as her true self. It's a shame we basically don't see her, or any of the other villains, again in the film, because the implications of both anima and animus seeing each other masked and unmasked is pretty huge. Oh well, good thing we have future versions to explore this.
Don't you see? We're the same.
This also sets the stage for what many iterations of the characters will do to explore their shadows, include each version of the two meeting each other. Miss Kitka may only be a disguise, but we have Miss Kitka with Batman and with Bruce, then Catwoman with Bruce, and then Batman. So, psychology aside, let's get into what we learn about them through these interactions. First off, Bruce is quite smitten with Miss Kitka.
This young lady is a stranger to our shores.
But he's pretty cool towards Catwoman.
Where is she, Catwoman?
In the show, he often compliments her beauty and attractiveness.
Never fear, there'll always be someone waiting for one as beauteous as you.
She may be evil, but she is attractive. You'll know more about that in a couple of years.
But no such reaction here. Bruce is quite antagonistic toward her, and Batman does not appreciate being pushed into the drink. Earlier in the movie, when discussing the villain's plot, he sounds as distressed by her involvement as the rest. This portion of the story, with Bruce and Miss Kitka, is fairly unique for Adam West's Batman, who spends most of his time in the mask. Or at least, is only Bruce briefly around his family.
Remember, Dick, don't look directly into the sun. It may cause damage to the retina of the eye.
While here, he has to pretend not to be Batman while still being, presumably, his genuine self. We don't see that often.
That man should have been here hours ago.
For good reason, given how this turns out. But this whole thing does serve to humanize Bruce Wayne in a way largely unexplored in this iteration. Something we will again see being Catwoman's role in the future. But this was the first time on screen that interactions with her provide a closer look into the many facets of Bruce Wayne.
Shall we give this matter further consideration over dinner tonight?
And what about how Catwoman feels about him? Bruce is the means to an end, and she may take the time to kiss him. This was not strictly required for her goal here, but she's also not particularly perturbed by his escape. If she has any feelings for either Bruce or Batman, they are not expressed, unlike later in the show.
If we went on opposite sides of the law, Batman, I could go for you.
She has just as much bloodlust for the end of the dynamic duo as any of the other villains.
We have to do something to get Batman out of the way.
As can often be the case, the existence of a female lead does a great deal for the man's character arc, but there's not much in the way of reciprocity. We learn almost nothing about Catwoman through her interactions with Bruce or Batman, other than general villainy. Hopefully future versions will be more generous.
Not so fast. Be more slow.
Overall, Catwoman in this movie is not an especially friendly foe, and she is not a romantic interest to Batman, only her disguise is to Bruce Wayne. However, it was a popular idea and would be expanded upon greatly in the following season of the show.
And then you can be mine forever, Batman. True, I'll have to sacrifice your intellect. With a build like yours, who cares? After all, one can't have one's cake and, eat it too.
Which is why I chose to talk about Lee Meriwether first, despite Julie Newmar having one cat appearance before her. Future installments even lean into the concept, as we'll get into eventually. But for today, Catwoman is really just in the role of a femme fatale here. She clearly has no strong personal feelings for Bruce or Batman. So let's get into why that might be. Alright, to wrap up with our fiendish feline, let's talk about a rather glaring fact. Cat or not, she is the only woman in the film. Well, not entirely the only, but women with speaking roles are vanishingly rare in this Gotham City. They must have had the same horrible freak of evolution that they have had in the galaxy far, far away, where such a high proportion of the population is male. No wonder everyone is unhinged.
Holy heartbreak.
Anyway, Catwoman was created, as I mentioned, to be a mirror of Batman way back in the 40s. Then the infamous book on the evils of comics, The Seduction of the Innocent, was published in 1954, and it had a lot to say about Bruce's home life, including a section about how Catwoman is essentially barking up the wrong tree with trying to seduce him.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I never thought about it that way. Batman is sort of gay. Be right back.
Which is a silly claim, given that she's been rather effective.
Catwoman, may I take a rain check on that kiss?
Certainly, Batman.
But this led to her disappearing from the comics until after she became popular in the 1966 show and movie. I point all this out because her being one of the only ladies around was already considered a bit of an issue. Then the show came along and featured a number of women. Catwoman even has a protege and female henchman later on, not to mention that Lee Meriwether herself stars in a couple episodes as another role. I wouldn't say it ever got up to the 51% from real life, but it was closer there than many other iterations of the Batman mythos. The movie then feels like a bit of an outlier. Part of this is because Julie Newmar, the Catwoman from the first and second seasons, was not available for the movie. It's kind of unclear why, actually, but the reason that Catwoman does not appear with the other villains here is because she had not been recast yet. Dick Grayson's aunt is also missing from the film, so Lee Meriwether has to hold up the whole of her sex on her own. That's a tough gig, so let's start with the negatives and finish off positive.
Feline fruity.
Very minor, but in the villain's lair, the doors are designed to match each of the 4 rogues. Catwoman has pussy willows on hers, which is true to character.
Felix,
Yes, Catwoman?
you can brush my pussy willows before you leave.
Hello, Pierre. This is Catwoman.
I'll see you in court. And if all goes well, knock on wood, I'll have you sprung before Pussy Willow time.
But the color and ribbon are not. It certainly could have been more fun than that, and is one of the rare times the movie treats her like a girl instead of a villain.
Catwoman, you tend to this headquarters.
Another might be a minor quibble, but I did not especially like this bit.
Catwoman, will you get a dustpan?
Riddler gets told this,
Would you prepare the submarine to get underway?
but the woman has to get the dustpan. He does then help with the process, and she's not expected to do any other domestic tasks. This just sort of rubbed me the wrong way.
Careful. Every one of them has a mother.
Speaking of that, the last gendered thing is being a honey trap for Bruce Wayne.
Comrade Wayne?
In the show, Catwoman was tempting, and usually tempted.
I'll do everything I can to rehabilitate you.
Marry me.
But seducing any version of him was not really a worthwhile scheme. To be clear, Catwoman certainly uses her sexuality to get what she wants in nearly every iteration of the character, but using it specifically to deceive our hero is fairly rare. She may distract him with her wiles, but we usually have reason to believe she is just as distracted by him, instead of thinking that this is all just a trick.
I guess you can never trust a woman.
You made a hasty generalization, Robin. It's a bad habit to get into.
I've already talked about this trope in a few of my videos on the Black Widow. Essentially, a great deal of stories feature a woman as a deceiver, and the reason a man falls from grace. She tastes the forbidden fruit, and you're just supposed to what? Continue resisting?
You win, Catwoman. I'll become your partner.
It reveals itself in a lot of things written by men, as well as real life. As I said, Catwoman is very much a femme fatale in this movie. Femme fatales are often present in film noir, a cynical genre in which morally gray characters are taken to the edge of their morality, and often beyond it.
We're both rotten.
Only you're a little more rotten. You got me to take care of your husband for you.
Most of these came out in the 40s and 50s and are an interesting sociological study, because to men, these women represented everything a woman should not be and were justly punished by the end of the film.
I won't because all of me wants to, and because you counted on that with me, the same as you counted on that with all the others.
While the women watching saw a female character who was fully fleshed out, whose emotions and inner life were relevant to the story as a whole, who could act in ways that no other female character was allowed to act, and well, a little unhappy ending was not enough to deter us from enjoying it.
The stuff that dreams are made of.
Catwoman often has the same effect on her female fans. It's great to see a lady motivated by her id, and because of the perennial nature of villains in comics, she rarely seems to suffer much for her crimes.
What known super criminals are at large just now?
So not only does Catwoman survive this story relatively unscathed, she also avoids some more gendered pitfalls. For example, despite getting the United Underworld back on track, she's never relegated to Team Mom or Babysitter.
United Underworld.
What's the matter with you all?
She's right.
And you bungled it again.
Quickly now! Each one in a separate pile.
She's just more focused on the payday than the others. She wants to see things through, while they may be distracted by their little jokes.
You're mad, Riddler. He could finish Batman by now.
She is equally evil and enjoys the idea of Batman being destroyed as much as her colleagues. While I mentioned how the interplay of the two can be interesting and flesh out her character, it's nice to see her stick to her supervillain roots.
Again, the dynamic duo escaped our trap.
In that vein, as discussed in the first section, it is fantastic that our felonious Feline is the most effective of the villains. Her gadgets work without a hitch, her seduction works immediately, and also clouds Bruce's judgment for the rest of the movie.
Miss Kitka dies if you take one more step.
This story has quite a bit of political commentary.
Hello, Admiral. Have you recently sold any war surplus submarines, and if so, to whom?
We disposed of a war surplus submarine last Friday to some chap named P. N. Gwynn.
From that submarine, no doubt.
The United World building, dear comrades in crime.
Our poor United World in microcosm.
Success! Success!
They've done it. Success. We've done it.
It includes the villains with Penguin's torpedoes and Riddler's rockets. And of course, Miss Kitka being Russian is rather pointed now. A beautiful Russian spy seducing our thoroughly American hero was common at the time.
This curtain which separates our countries is so foolish.
But unlike any of these ladies, Miss Kitka is not seducing Bruce Wayne to get anything from him, just a way to lure Batman to their trap. And she is, of course, not even Russian, just a Gotham City resident who has turned to a life of crime, as one does. So she subverts this common trope before it was very old. And honestly, it feels kind of like the villain's plot in Die Hard. The politics are just a front. She really is a cat burglar at the end of the day.
$1 billion cash from each country.
So while I'm not hugely fond of our only female character being put in the role of a honey trap, especially since it is her only real contribution to the villain's schemes, I do like that it becomes something she can use as she pleases, and that she doesn't catch feelings out of it. Instead, she continues going after what she actually wants.
Nothing can stop us now.
A femme fatale without suffering anything fatal herself? Truly iconic.
Delightful.
So is this Catwoman, meow, then a love interest? Very much so. The only time she has that role is a plot to destroy Batman. She is not teamed up with any of the male villains either, but is as out for herself as they are.
Our objective? The Security Council.
Our felonious feline may have somewhat less to do than is often the case, but it catapulted her into the movies and is a perfect portrayal of the Princess of Plunder.
How did it go, Catwoman?
Perfectly.
Thank you for listening to me talk about the first Catwoman. We'll talk about her predecessor at the same cat time, same cat channel, but next time we're gonna get into the first outing for Furiosa, just in time for her movie. Remember me? Please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, join my Patreon, buy me a coffee, all the things so you don't miss it. See you then.